Well, hello there, everyone. David Willett here, host of Cyber Voices, the official podcast of the Australian Information Security Association. But you might know us as ASA. Over the next few weeks, I will be bringing you a series of exclusive interviews recorded live at ASA South Australia's event, Adelaide Sec. This event brought together the brightest minds in the industry across government and private sector to share ideas on how we can make South Australia and Australia in general a more cyber secure place to live and work. Each one will share with you unique insights on how to improve your security operations. From incident response to third party risk management, you do not want to miss our South Australian megaminds of security on Cyber Voices. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your platform of choice and ring the bell to make sure you get notified when our latest episodes drop. And now it's time for Cyber Voices live from Adelaide Sec with Karl Sellmann. All right, welcome back. It's another episode of Cyber Voices at Adelaide Sec, and I am joined today by Karl Sellmann, who is the Chief Information Security Officer at Flinders University and chairperson of the Australasian Higher Education Cybersecurity Services Partnership. Karl plays a pivotal role in strengthening cyber capabilities across the sector, connecting institutions to build resilience and capacity. Karl, welcome to Cyber Voices.
Yeah, thank you, David. And it's great to talk to you today as a fellow colleague in the higher ed sector.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I don't actually often talk to another CISO on this show. So it's nice to have, we can nerd out together, which is great. So listeners, we're in the afternoon session here at Adelaide Sec, and I've just been lurking at the back of the Gilbert Suite downstairs here at the Adelaide Convention Centre, where I saw Karl speak with a title that I love because it describes my whole career. Stop playing a game of whack-a-mole. Now, that's such a vivid image, by the way. Why do you think that would resonate with so many CISOs? I think it's obvious. But
yeah. Look, no, I completely agree. I mean, it doesn't matter which industry that you're in, CISOs are challenged by the emerging threats that are occurring to their organisation and to the sector and nation, really. And often cyber professionals get caught up with the stakeholders in their ear, management in their ear around trying to protect the latest and greatest threat that occurs or challenge that occurs, and they get caught up in it through. And it's really easy to do so if you do it over a period of time to just continue to focus in on emerging threats and activities. And ultimately, then you find yourself playing a game of whack-a-mole. As the threat comes up, let's address it. Let's throw a control or technology in with it. And I challenge the cyber community to take a step back from that because you're completely chasing your tail. You've got to come up with a strategic approach, because our threat actors out there, they've got bigger budgets and wider scope to do lots of different things that we can't compete with the controls. So you've got to change your whole mentality and go to a strategy-based approach.
Yeah, you threw up a picture in your talk of a whack-a-mole machine, and I just thought, geez, doesn't that just look like my average workday? You're standing there and you're waiting for the email to come from this person or some Teams message, and you're like, all right, just going to quickly bonk it on the head so it doesn't distract me from trying to do anything else.
Yep.
And you mentioned there that your approach to this is to be taken strategy-led approach. That's one of those things I think should sound really obvious. It should, but it cannot always be the most easiest thing to kind of get yourself on the path of.
No.
So tell us a little bit more about what you mean by a strategy-led approach.
Yeah, look, I think you're exactly right. It's easier said than done through in there, because you are under pressure with threats, with activities, with, yes, exactly the latest email from an executive to say, can you please address this? Or can you undertake that? And it is really challenging to try and proportion your time through to not be continually engaged from that perspective. Look, each organisation that I've come and worked and operated within and also supported through have different approaches through and have different levels of engagement through to the CISO and to the security area and capability area. But ultimately, you've got to try and put things in place, and it might take some time. It really might require some period of time lead up to build some certain capabilities so that then you can pull yourself away to actually focus in on a bigger picture. It is challenging to say, do you know what? I understand, we'll get to it. And then you have that on hold if the threat or the risk isn't commensurate, that you can put it a little bit on hold so that then you can make sure that the strategy and the activities associated with the strategy continue to operate through. I think the other thing that's really important is, which I alluded to in the presentation, is feedback mechanisms. So you've got to have an ability to adjust and change because these threats are going to carry with it different risks to the organization. And through appropriate governance, you have to be able to adjust and steer the ship, so to speak, through if there are emerging or higher risks that validate your need to change direction or change your focus at that period of time. It's just part and parcel of how and what we operate within.
Yeah, and if we can kind of take it to like the first step a little bit. So it's a great way to stop playing whack-a-mole in the long run, but
Mhm,
it's a long game that you're
mhm,
playing by stepping into this, which I think is something that can be really hard for people to get started on. When you first started engaging in a strategy-led
mhm.
approach, whether at Flinders University,
Yep.
and I know in higher education, we do well, but we're also fighting for resources and time and funding
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And there is universities are big,
Yeah.
and and it's not exclusive to universities. There's a lot going on, no
Mm.
matter where you are. How do you rise above? Like, how do you rise above and figure out what that strategy is, and then keep your eye on that northern star, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Look, and again, I think the first period of time that you go into an organization, you've got to have a clear game plan in there. And you do have to allot some time to hit those, immediate things and activities that come up and do occur, part and parcel again, as I said, through in that. If I have a look at any type of organization that I've walked into, is transparency is the first thing that you've got to try and establish. You actually got to quickly determine the lay of the land and the scope, size, complexity of what you're operating within. And then you focus in on easy, quick wins there. And that might not necessarily be doing the doing. It might be in establishing good leadership support for you so that then you can start to devoid operational activities through to those that you do trust through good leadership. That might be a strategy that you might have to employ to free up the time for you. It's case by case, but those first or that early period is really pivotal to try and make that understand or to get that level of understanding and then to form an approach towards it. And it's usually multi approaches or multi activities. It's not a one size fits all one thing that's going to solve that challenge through to create and carve out both trust that you know what you're doing as well and allow you the opportunity to develop longer term strategy.
Yeah, and it may seem cliche to go after quick wins or low hanging fruit, but it totally works
100%.
because on a number of different levels, I think doing that also helps you build momentum.
Correct.
If you're dealing with a team or a group of people or an organization that is not used to that kind of momentum in cyber,
Yep.
or maybe not used to seeing that you can implement a cyber control and the world doesn't burn down.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree.
And that, I think you kind of mentioned there, you build that kind of political capital within the organization. And I reckon I've spent up to a year, if not longer, building on those quick wins.
Yeah.
All the while, that view of what your longer term game plan must be building. When's kind of the cutoff? Like when do you shift from quick wins to the actual like strategy, which is usually a multi-year journey?
Yeah. Well, I don't think you ever stop from quick wins.
Hmm.
So you've got to bake that into your program. And what you want to try and do is you want to try and divest your time so that then you're not solely just on quick wins, so that then you can actually put your thought, your IP, your collateral that you've got in your inside, your knowledge, to a better use, right? So I still today, I'm still working on quick wins, right? Every day there's opportunity and you've got to make a decision. Does it align with the strategy? Is it going to impact the strategy or is it really a quick win that I can just either get one of my leaders to knock off and support really quickly? Or do I just take, and that's part and parcel of the decision making that you're going to continually evolve with. Now, If I were doing that for 3, 4, 5, 6 years afterwards, where I'm just only working on quick wins, then I would be saying, is the business the right fit for me? Right. So if it is continuing to be a reactionary organization that isn't strategy led, then you've got to ask that question.
You're back to playing whack-a-mole then.
Correct.
You're
You're
still playing
spot on.
whack-a-mole.
You're
Yeah.
spot on. And so again, any employment, you've got to say, what value can I add? What value can I build? And if the organization is still just continually wanting to play whack-a-mole, then maybe they're not ready for a C level or a strategic leader in cyber. They actually just want an operational person to achieve outcomes, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess most people would probably be stepping or phasing their strategy out as well. So
Correct.
the quick wins you're celebrating, they can change because then you start actually, maybe it's not quick wins anymore. Maybe it's more, okay, so, we finished the review or the health check of our Active Directory and our backup, and now we've got a clear understanding of what our risks are. Well done, team. That's worth celebrating. We
Yeah.
actually know something now we didn't know before. That's a win.
Yeah. I suppose the challenge for any IT professional, this is not cyber, any IT professional is the quick win for the purpose of an outcome, or is it service delivery?
Mhm.
And so if you mix the two up, I think that's where professionals get challenged because they see a quick win as a way of appeasing the customer or keeping the customer happy, which is a different mindset that you should have from a delivery management perspective. So for me, quick wins is where you can achieve an outcome that then leads to a longer term goal through in there. And that is a building block towards a greater strategy or a greater outcome. So I suppose that's one of the things that people need to differentiate between.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a bit more about the development of your strategy then.
Yeah, okay. So if we're talking about Flinders 3, we've had a strategy. It's been a 2-year strategy. I've been at Flinders 2 years there, which is risk compliance based strategy. It's 3. In assessing Flinders, and I'd started to do that before I actually was employed with Flinders, so in the lead up to my employment. Through in there, I assessed really the state of play and tried to get some transparency through there and working through with the various leaders within the IDS area to try and get that transparency and visibility. But ultimately came up with a risk-based strategy, a compliance-based strategy, which has seen Flinders adopt an industry standard. We use NIST,
Mhm.
NIST standard through in there and alignment of controls. And we've been on a 2-year journey of maturing, creating capability and maturing those controls through. And we're not done yet. We see that probably by the end of 2026, we'll be in a position that our maturity will be at a level that's commensurate with the risk appetite of the organisation.
Yeah, well, I mean, 2 years it's a solid chunk of time, but
Mm,
I imagine you've got a bit of a refresh after that as well because I think you hear a lot of people go, "Oh, yeah, we'll do 3 years, we'll do 4 years." I think whatever is right for you in that
correct.
moment.
Yeah.
I've often had arguments come back to me from boards and execs going, "Oh, why is this one only 3 years? We've seen 4 and 5 years in the past." I'm like, "Yeah, well, we need to set a realistic goal and we don't really know where we're going to be in 3 years time or what's going to be happening in the threat environment in 3, which
Yeah.
you kind of alluded
Yeah.
to earlier." In how did you go about getting alignment within the university on what your strategy should look like? I guess I know from experience, universities are all about consultation. And how did you have to make any concessions there? How did you get that buy-in?
Look, no, it to me, the buy-in was a result of being open and transparent and giving visibility through. And I think that comes about you with the leadership being honest and open to show the fallacies and show the areas that there are concerns and constraints through with there. The strategy that we had that I put in place was initially a 2-year, and it was to try and get significant uplift really quickly. So it was a mix between an issue based strategy and a risk based strategy, but to really get some significant uplift promptly through. So once we're able to illustrate transparently and through industry standard how it would change, and to illustrate that very quickly with some quick wins in the first 6 months of the 2-year strategy, then you start to get buy-in through with there, and you then double down and you get external validation, right? So again, if you use an industry standard like NIST, or you can use ISO 27001 or the ISMS, whatever takes your fancy, right?
It's a number on a graph
It's
they
a
can
number on
relate
a graph
to.
there, and you can get that supported with external validation. You help build authenticity in what you're undertaking, what you're doing. And if you can relay what the program in the programmatic approach out of the roadmap of the strategy will do in terms of the maturity uplift, and you can really illustrate that, and then you achieve it in the first 6-12 months in certain areas that you have said that's going to be the focus. That's how you build trust. That's how you build momentum as well.
What are some of the challenges you've had?
Oh, you name it. You name it. Look,
It's a loaded question. I'm
it
sorry.
is. No. Look, I could, as you're aware, the higher ed sector is definitely challenging. They're mini cities, and they're not necessarily to the true extent corporate. So a lot of the stakeholders there don't understand risk. They don't understand what you're trying to help them achieve in operating and being safe and secure. You're trying to help them to some degree. So that kind of messaging and that kind of understanding, that awareness and education has, oh, yeah, absolutely been challenging, but had good support. So when I came on board, that was the first discussions that I had with the senior leadership. And even it was actually even before I came aboard, it was one of the criteria that helped me make the decision to come to Flinders, to get that buy-in from the senior leadership through. So I think that's really important to have. So yeah, that awareness, that cultural consideration is particularly challenging. You made the mention as well as if you can show and demonstrate that you can tangibly change and shift the dial, that is a hard slog in the first 6-12 months, but it starts to gain momentum. And if I have a look at Flinders now and our strategy, got a great program management, great people, can-do people, getting the great leadership around it. I'm being really honest, I'm really hands-off. So employing and making sure that you've got good support mechanisms and they understand you and you've taken them on that journey is not only self-fulfilling, but it's sustainable through. So again, it allows me the opportunity to focus in on those now value-adding capabilities, which it will happen pretty soon.
Yeah. Do you think that's kind of part of the journey of a CISO coming into an organization? Is there's a lot of hands-on tools work at the beginning, and there's a bit of trying to think of the right way to put this, but you kind of have to be willing to follow the bouncing ball fairly slowly to
Yeah.
begin with, to get to get that momentum and to make that demonstration that you can do good security, make a measurable difference, reduce risk, and not bring everything crashing down. And once people have got that confidence in you, then you can kind of, as you said, you can be hands off a little bit, right? Yeah,
Yeah, spot on.
yeah.
No, you're exactly right. So I'd probably frame it that one of the first things that you've got to do is establish feedback mechanisms and loops.
Mhm.
And that has to be not only just people centric, has to be technology centric as well. So, basic things, the basic controls that you have to have in place within complex organizations through. And you have feedback mechanisms just to check and validate that, both from a people perspective, but also a digital perspective. It is like, if I give you a prime example, right? Domains within a Microsoft tenancy through, and having a level of comfortability that adequate controls are in place. You can put tooling in there to make that assessment and validation alongside of what people are illustrating and telling you as well, so that then you get multiple feedback mechanisms to get that transparency of where are we actually at, to make those judgment calls through and to help steer the ship. And you're right, you've got to roll up the sleeves.
Mhm.
And people wanting to see that you are able to roll up the sleeves, wanting to roll up sleeves and make decisions. And again, that's that first period of time when you walk into an organization, you've got to build trust within your leadership and within your people, and within your organization, that you do know what you're doing. You understand, you are able to roll up the sleeves and call a spade if it needs to be.
Yeah. And some tough decisions too you've got to make as well.
Oh,
You've got to
100%.
there's often yeah, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, but you've also got to be a little bit intentional about what you're not going to do as well, right?
Correct. Correct. And you've got to be transparent on that. Like any stakeholder engagement, there's going to be winners and losers, right? And it's around how do you put that messaging in a way that is then accepted. They don't have to like it, but they've got to be able to accept it at some stage through that consultation, through that messaging. And yeah, you're exactly right. That is very pivotal.
Yeah. Here's an interesting one for you. The delivery of the strategy.
Right.
How does that look for you, right? Like I've seen everything from one or two slides, very peeled back, very limited, to 40-page documents, which are, almost like a university research paper in themselves.
Yeah.
What's the right method of delivery to help people get on board and understand strategy?
Yeah. Look, I don't think it's a one size fits all. You've got to have a look at your organization, the maturity of your stakeholders there, and your senior and your junior stakeholders there. So it's not an easy answer to give you. If you're coming into a more mature organization that understands risk, that at a leadership level, that understands, yes, the smaller digestible papers through, or the messaging is well understood. For Flinders, during my journey there early on, there was a change in the audit and risk leadership there who chaired the audit and risk, and came as a previous partner of one of the big four.
Mm.
Understood risk, understood compliance. I didn't need to teach them or to educate them or the like. All I needed to be is transparent and make them aware of the current position, and then give them the understanding of how we're going to deliver it with a risk-based approach. So they could understand then of going, okay, we're going to tackle that, but we're not going to tackle that until year 2 or year 3 or whatever the period is, because it isn't at the same risk level as things that you're putting them forward. Now, again, that's fortunate. Not all organizations are in that. Not it, and if your leadership there isn't at that level as well, which in some cases that's the case, you've got to try and find that partner within that senior grouping, whether it be at the board level or the risk committee level or subcommittee of the board, or senior management that understands and can help support and navigate that journey as well. I think that's really important through. They will then help guide and steer and be your advocates, not like any other change, right? So it's no different through in there. Your junior staff might need some more convincing or might need some more education and further details. If you've got a really technology centric grouping of in your IT, they want evidence based metrics to illustrate and demonstrate. It's not a one size fits all, right? So I think you've got to make that determination, and it evolves. So I have a look at the board papers and the management papers and the program papers that go forward, or the collateral and the artifacts that go forward. And it's vastly changed from when it first started. It was a story. Now it's visibility, transparency on the progress, like any other project, right?
Yeah.
So
It's such a it's such an interesting role that we have, isn't it? There's almost a little bit of you talking then about like the different stakeholders on the board or the risk committee or the executive, whoever it might be. Like, all right, who are my promoters? Who are my detractors? How do I leverage the promoters? How do I also then get to understand the detractors? But then there's a little bit of like having to learn what everyone wants from you and what's going to make them happy and trying to find something that's going to work, because a detractor who may not even have any kind of direct influence over you can become a pretty loud voice and derail your entire program
100%.
pretty quickly. I wonder if that's why we're all such control freaks. Or maybe that's just me.
No. Look, I think one of the fortunate things for myself in my career is that I used to be an academic through as well, and I used to teach stakeholder engagement.
Yeah, nice.
And it's a sidebar from cyber, right? It doesn't matter what change it actually is, stakeholder and what business you're in. It's a really fundamental transferable skill that you need to have, is that consistent methodology around stakeholder engagement. It's one of the skills that I try and implore on my senior staff and my leadership staff is front and foremost. you've got to be able to engage and assess and re-engage and reassess continuously as part of the way in which you work
Yeah.
on an ongoing basis. So I completely agree. We wear multiple hats, and I think in our role as CISO, you have to have these bows to your string, or
Definitely.
strings to your bow, sorry.
You and I could probably nerd out all afternoon about our battle scars, Carl, but I do want to let you get back and enjoy the rest of the day. So I think something nice to round this off would be if we've got a young or an old CISO listening to this episode
Yeah.
today who's currently playing whack-a-mole so much that their arm's about to fall off. What would you say to them? Like, come in tomorrow and make this one change. What could they do?
It's okay to let something just evolve for a period of time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You've got to create space and change your mindset. If you don't change your mindset, you're never going to change.
Mhm.
You're going to be playing whack a mole for the rest of your career, and you'll limit your capability and ability to affect what I think is a really key strategic role and activity for any organization. So I really implore people just to take a step back, breathe. The world is not going to fall apart, right? People are going to be, if you give them the reason, people understand you cannot continue just to be at their whim.
Yeah.
And then you need to refocus and retrain your mind to what is important, which is a strategy based approach to cybersecurity.
Yep. Excellent. Well, there you have it, everyone. That was Carl from Flinders University, Chief Information Security Officer, sharing his insights on strategy-led approach in cybersecurity. And I can guarantee you, I've seen some of his collateral. It's fascinating stuff. And yeah, if you see him around, make sure you pull him up and pick his brain because he's got a lot of really good stuff to share. Carl, thank you so much for sharing your voice with us today.
No, absolutely a pleasure, and really enjoy functions like this and the opportunity to help educate, make aware, and pass on any of my learnings. I learn as much from everyone else at these types of sessions and days. So, more than happy to impart my small piece of advice that I can.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
No problem.